today. Thank you for this time that we have that we can remember certain things and apply those lessons to current history. Bless our time together in Jesus' name, amen. Well, today I'm going to call it Time to Remember. Just a little way of remembering. These are theoretically the platforms on which we can be found, although if you're listening to this on YouTube, we have an alternative YouTube channel this week because YouTube gave us a strike, which means we're not allowed to upload or live stream on YouTube for a week. So I think that expires on Tuesday. I'm not going to tell you what I think I got dinged for, because I will get a strike on this one, and that'll be 2, and 3, your channel's removed. So, well, yeah, but that's right. So it's only Brian, so maybe we could, no. But I had mentioned something related to a thing that we call Charlie Vector 019er, if you think about it. And I didn't even talk, we put a video up in March, and in early June they said, hey, that video said something you shouldn't say. It's against our policy, so you get a strike. So I appealed it, and the appeal was granted. They took the strike away. But we always upload a duplicate. And so then they went to the duplicate this week and said, hey, you said something in there that you shouldn't say. It violates our guidelines. So I appealed it and said, you already said that there was no problem. And so guess what they did this time? They denied the appeal. Same video. So our tech overlords are, I'm in training. They're trying to get me to not say certain things or not do certain things. Listen, folks, we are in serious trouble. So just so you know, we had been putting these up. Somebody had been putting these up on Blog Talk Radio. But that person who's been gracious to do that for many years now has decided to shift to a different focus in ministry. So as a result, you won't find the MP3 up on Blog Talk Radio at Christian Sentinel anymore. But we're in the process of working with a provider, and we hope to have an MP3 channel up pretty soon to replace those, because some people like to use the MP3 because it's less bandwidth and they have data caps and that sort of thing. So also Remnant Truth Network will be a little bit better about uploading there. We do live stream on Facebook for the time being. But this is, you think you get to a point where you can deal with our tech overlords. And then it's a constantly moving target. So at some point, our platform that we'll have will be it'll be separate from that. We'll continue on YouTube for a while because we have, 40-some thousand subscribers. And, I don't want what I do to affect the church messages, the Bible teaching messages and that type of thing, but because we're all kind of joined at the hip. So I'm trying to be careful, but when you can't say the truth, it's unbelievable. We are in so much trouble in the United States. That's why I said time to remember, because I'm going to look at a few things today. And we look at this convergence of events all the time. Constantly, the world is disrupted. And each week I think, it's a holiday weekend. Everybody's going to back off this week, right? It's probably worse this week than it's in terms of what I think are relevant things happening. So I'm going to try to go through those, and I've tried to organize them, but I was out of town for a couple days this week, actually, with family. But let me open with a passage from Jude, the book of Jude. Jude, the servant of Jesus Christ and brother of James, to them that are sanctified by God the Father and preserved in Jesus Christ and called, mercy unto you and peace and love be multiplied. Beloved, when I gave all diligence to write unto you of the common salvation, it was needful for me to write unto you and exhort you that ye should earnestly contend for the faith which was once delivered unto the saints. For there are certain men crept in unawares, who were before of old ordained to this condemnation, ungodly men, turning the grace of our Lord, our God, into lasciviousness, and denying the only Lord God and our Lord Jesus Christ. Now, the examples that we could go through today about how this verse and this passage has direct application to things going on in the world are legion. Everywhere you look. Now, we focus on Bible prophecy in this hour quite a bit, and looking at the events that are related to things that will be fulfilled in the future. And each week, I think that they'll be fulfilled in the near future, very near future. There's just a lot going on, but there's a lot of things, and because of events in the world and culture and that sort of thing, we haven't talked a lot about what's going on in the church. I don't even have slides for it, but I just saw that the United Methodist Church in the UK came out and went totally into the same-sex marriage and even cohabiting. They have like cohabitation vows now that you can have in that church. I heard somebody say, "You're kidding." No, I'm not kidding. I'm not. It should be obvious when I'm kidding. But it's unbelievable. The Southern Baptist has gone through a rather tumultuous number of years, particularly over critical race theory, social justice, and Marxism that's coming into the church. There's a good book out. I can't remember the name of it. It's by Vodi Bacham, and it's on social justice and critical race theory. It's very well done. I think it does a great job of addressing the issues. But I just want to share a few things that are kind of indicative of the times in which we live. And so here's a new article and the new cover at Popular Mechanics. Now, you don't think that you would get theological issues out of Popular Mechanics. They do cover the UFO issue every now and then, and I haven't talked about the UFO report, or UAP they're calling them now, that came out from the government, just because I don't think the report had anything of all that significance. It said, yeah, there's things out there we don't know what they are, and we can't figure them out, but the implication was we're not that concerned about them. These things do things that defy the law of gravity and physics. I personally think they're demonic manifestations that are being seen. They seem to be increasing. As we go further along. They started really being seen quite a bit after the rebirth of the nation of Israel in 1948 or just before that, and continuing. So there was no conclusive report. But here's an article in Popular Mechanics, Can Science Cure Death? And the conclusion is, it sure looks like it. Now, this is a very significant theological issue, would you agree? And here it is in Popular Mechanics. The belief is that they will eventually be able to cure death. What they're trying to do right now, the article says, is they're trying to extend people's lives. They think they're getting to the place where people are going to be able to live to about 130. That would mean I'm only a little over halfway. I'm not sure that, who knows how long any of us have, to be honest. I was talking to some family this weekend, and we were talking about, that guy, he was 60 and a marathoner, and he had a heart attack and died. And that guy he was a runner too, and he had a heart attack and died. Now, one thing to take away from that is don't be a runner. But, everybody has to do their own thing. But this is a very significant thing. And so the theory is that if they can get you to live longer and longer, the belief is that man will ultimately solve the immortality problem. Now, this has a real Tower of Babylonian type feel to it, that man is going to solve the problem and live forever. Now, the other problem that they have about living forever is when you look around at the world, a lot of people don't really want to be part of this world anymore. They don't want to live forever in a world like this. It's getting worse. You may have noticed. We'll talk about this. Look at just some of the things we're going. Massive heat wave in the West. In Oregon, they had temperatures of 117. In British Columbia, 121 or 22. 50 degrees centigrade. Temperatures are exceeding that. I think I saw an article about Death Valley having 129. That's my notes. Thank you. I wonder what I was going to talk about. The tech staff around here does everything. They don't do my makeup yet. I do that myself. 130 degrees, 129, 30 degrees in Death Valley. I was talking to somebody in Tucson the other day. It was 118 degrees. And then all of a sudden we'll have an overnight temperature of 50 here, and it'll be heat index, 170 degrees, and then a couple days later, you got to get a little coat on if you're outside because it's cold and windy. It's just insane weather. But in addition to the heat, and hundreds of people have died because of the heat. We also have this condo collapse down in Florida. I don't have any slides on that either. But today, there's a tropical storm headed that way. They're concerned about the rest of the tower collapsing on the rescue workers. So my understanding is they've shut down what really I think is a recovery operation at this point. There's still 125 people or so missing. Just a huge tragedy. I mean, I heard there was a firefighter that found his daughter's body in the collapse. Couples, whole families have just disappeared. It's an epic tragedy. Of course, that didn't stop Secretary Granholm. I forget what department what part of the government she's in charge of ruining. She said that it was obviously global warming and rising sea levels. Well, she couldn't exclude that as a possibility. And she couldn't exclude that as a possibility. You know why? She's a moron, okay? She's an idiot. Because she's been ingrained to think everything in terms of global warming and I guess racial politics. So she didn't blame it on white supremacists, but she did get the other convenient target, which was global warming. And this is Lake Oroville in California, continues to go down. These reservoirs are down to about 30% of capacity as we enter the dry season. Reduced snowpack. I will reiterate what I said last week. There was an email in my video presentation last week that you could contact for some prepping advice. I think it was pretty solid. You don't have to follow it, but I think we're going to have problems. I was talking to someone who manages part of a car dealership yesterday, and he said they usually get 400 or 500 cars a month allocation from the manufacturer, one of the major manufacturers, to sell at the dealership each month. They're now down to between 40 and 70 per month because of a chip shortage. Now, that's also causing used car prices to go up because they work. There's a manufacturer near Fort Wayne, Indiana, a truck manufacturer. They have thousands of trucks that have been manufactured and are now sitting in massive parking lots waiting for the chips that they need to be finished. And they're not that expensive of chips. There is a supply disruption. The main chip manufacturers in Taiwan, and they're having problems. China's acting like they're going to invade Taiwan. China has taken over Hong Kong in violation of agreements. newspapers have been shut down. People, dissidents and people who disagree with it are in jail. How long did this, by the way, how long did all of this take? I mean, if you put it on a watch, if your life, the years you've lived, it's just a couple seconds have ticked by and things have changed. I think it will accelerate further in the future as we get closer to the return of the Lord. Now, this is just a little graphic. This is from the New York Times. And there's things I like about the New York Times in that they have good graphics and bad editorial policy, so you just have to kind of read it for the pictures. But this is a good graphic on some of the recent Supreme Court decisions. First of all, there was this one about Brnovich, Attorney General of Arizona versus the Democratic National Committee. And the court there ruled that the restrictions on voting in the wrong precinct is lawful, and the state can forbid voters from relying on another person to collect and drop off ballots. Well, of course, in that decision, the decision was 6-3. What they're calling a court, the New York Times says the court's moving to the right. If it's moving to the right, it's sort of one of those things you got to really measure with a microscope to see it. But in this case, it was a 6-3 decision. There was another decision, Americans for Prosperity Foundation versus the Attorney General of California. Now, the purpose of this case was California had enacted a law that said nonprofits have to disclose who their donors are. Now, we know why this was put in place. This was put in place because, remember the Proposition 8? That was the pro-traditional marriage amendment that was adopted by a majority of Californians. Remember that. A majority of Californians said, yeah, we want traditional marriage to be the definition of marriage. That was until Reagan appointee, I think it was a Reagan appointee, he was confirmed under Bush. Judge in San Francisco struck that law down as unconstitutional, and eventually that became sort of the legal jurisprudence of the Obergefell decision 6 years ago this past week. Judge Walker, who's gone on to he's passed away now, and he's gone on to his reward to get what he deserved, unless he repented of it. But there was no indication that he would. And that decision came out in 2010, I believe. 2011 or 2010. So anyway, the Supreme Court said, well, can we require that? Because people said that violates our freedom of association under the First Amendment. And the court said, in a 6-3 decision, it said, you cannot require that. But the interesting thing the Times did in the article was they did a survey. So where do you guys stand on what the Supreme Court says? So where the public stands, requiring nonprofits to report their major donors to the state does not violate their First Amendment rights. 60% of Americans think that was okay. They would agree with that. There's no violation of your First Amendment. So what does that show? That shows that people don't know the Constitution. They don't know the Declaration of Independence. You can remember the quotes. Remember Barack Obama when he says all men are created equal and are endowed by their creator? When he got to the by their creator part, whenever he talked about it, he had like a catch in his throat and he kind of stumbled over those words. He did this. You see I played the videos. When I was a graduate student, one of the things I did, I was in the criminology department, and my research project that I chose was to survey people going into criminology, corrections, and police work, how they felt about certain parts of the Constitution. Now, I didn't word them like the Constitution, but I said I took the principle of the Constitution and put it into a survey question. And what I found was that among law enforcement wannabes and correctional officer wannabes or correctional administration wannabes, the support for constitutional principles, this is by mind you, 1976, 1977, was under 40% in my survey among students at that university. That's pretty shocking. Look at this, Democrats 74%, Republicans 44% think that that's okay. Another decision was the Fulton versus City of Philadelphia. This was where the City of Philadelphia had enacted an ordinance that said that religious institutions that are involved in foster care cannot restrict or prefer traditional couples, male-female couples, in placing kids for adoption or foster care. Supreme Court said that's unconstitutional, and they could not do that, and the decision was 9-0. So even, the liberal, I object to liberal bloc. I mean, I think it should be called, left-wing, radical left-wing bloc. And I don't think this is a conservative bloc. You've got maybe three guys, Gorsuch, Alito, and Thomas, that are conservative. I think Barrett and Kavanaugh are still an open question, although Barrett has been a major disappointment, in my opinion. But look at the survey on this issue. Requiring religious agencies to allow foster children to be placed with same-sex couples does not violate their First Amendment rights. So it's a religious agency, and requiring them to give them to somebody that's against their religious principles, 61% of Democrats thought that doesn't violate their rights. And it was almost 50-50 when you looked at all people across the board. In that decision, Justice Alito, and it was a very weak decision, they decided it on, in order to get a 9-0 vote, what they did was they kept narrowing the issue down till they got everybody to agree with it, which means it has little precedential value. It didn't really address the issues. And it was a pretty typical display by John Roberts of being a weak, wishy-washy guy, because he just wanted to get a 9-0 decision. So here's what Alito said. Now, Alito agreed with the decision, but he thought, I'm concurring in the judgment, but this is what I really think. For all these reasons, I would overrule Smith and reverse the decision below. Philadelphia's exclusion of the Catholic Social Services from foster care work violates the Free Exercise Clause, and CSS is therefore entitled to an injunction barring Philadelphia from taking such action. After receiving more than 2,500 pages of briefing, and after more than a half year of post-argument cogitation, the court has admitted a wisp of a decision that leaves religious liberty in a confused and vulnerable state. Those who count on this court to stand up for the First Amendment have every right to be disappointed, as am I. And I would add, as am I. It was a terrible decision. Now, the next thing I'm going to show you is this we're going to get into the technology side of things that are developing in technology. The first is it's a nail salon, right? And it's a day spa. I don't know, because I don't go to these places. But anyway, so this is a nail salon in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates, and this is what they're doing. They are taking an electronic chip, and they are putting it on a person's fingernail. And then you'll see they put all this glitter and that type of thing to hide the chip. And now on this chip, they have enough information. It can be your passport. It can contain other information to get you into places. The owner of the spa is like, well, this is fantastic, because, you don't even need your phone. You just give them the finger, I guess, you use your finger, to, as a couth person would say, you use your finger to give them this information, credit card, your passport, other information. They've done over 500 of them. They tout this though as being, well, this is highly secure because it's on your finger. Now, listen, I watch crime shows on TV. You think somebody won't figure out that they'll just collect a few fingers when they need them and they'll just take, you understand what I'm saying? That maybe they will remove the finger from the person to use their chip to get places. So it's not highly secure. There's also, you remember this thing that we had back in October of 2019. I talked about it, I played videos from it. It was an event called the Event 201. It was to discuss Charlie Victor 019er, or a precursor to Charlie Victor 019er, about how the world would react to a pandemic. It was sponsored by Johns Hopkins University, the World Economic Forum, and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, back when Bill and Melinda Gates were still an item. It seems like they're still working together ideologically. They've just sort of separated over a number of other issues. Poor Bill, I mean, he might only have $80 billion left when this is over instead of, $150 billion. And you always wonder, well, when you see a billionaire and his value goes down $10 billion, but he's still worth $50 billion. It's like, did that really impact his lifestyle? Like, is he not going to buy, his 34th Tesla or something like that to put it in the garage at his 8th home? That's that's not going to happen. But so what's happening though is, so they did this thing on a pandemic, and then we had a pandemic. Coincidental, could be, but certainly there were people planning for it. I mean, we would expect people in public health to plan for things. There have been pandemics throughout history, so you would expect public health people to do this, but just kind of weird on the timing thing. Now they're doing cyber attacks, and this morning I was reading articles about a huge cyber attack that's underway. There's some grocery store chains in Europe and elsewhere, that Sweden maybe, that have had to close down because they've been undergone a ransomware attack. I think they've attacked like 308 businesses, the last I heard. This is a problem. So you would expect people in cybersecurity to plan for that. The firm I work for, we have a cybersecurity team that monitors these things, and we go through training. Don't click on this. It looks very inviting. Don't click on this. Don't do that. Because there are bad people out there that want to do things. Well, now the World Economic Forum is sponsoring a thing called Cyber Polygon. Here's their introductory video to that.
Economies and societies to the core, and shown us how vulnerable we are to biological threats. In the digital world, similar risks are being overlooked right now. A cyber attack with COVID-like characteristics would spread faster and further than any biological virus. Its reproductive rate would be around 10 times greater than what we've experienced with the coronavirus. To give you an idea, one of the fastest worms in history, the 2003 Slammer sapphire worm, doubled in size approximately every 8.5 seconds, infecting over 75,000 devices in 10 minutes and almost 11 million devices in 24 hours. Fortunately, at least until now, cyber attacks have not impacted our health the way pandemics have, but the economic damages, and therefore the impact they have had on our daily lives, have been equal and sometimes even greater. You see, the only way to stop the exponential propagation of a COVID-like cyber threat is to fully disconnect the millions of vulnerable devices from one another and from the internet. All of this in a matter of days. A single day without the internet would cost our economies more than $50 billion, and that's before considering the economic and societal damages should these devices be linked to essential services, such as transport or healthcare. As the digital realm increasingly merges with our physical world, the ripple effects of cyber attacks on our safety just keep on expanding at a faster pace than what we're preparing for. COVID-19 was known as an anticipated risk. So is the digital equivalent. Let's be better prepared for that one. The time is now.
And that's sponsored by the World Economic Forum, and that'll take place on July 9th. You can get on the Cyber Polygon website, and you can sign up for it. You can attend it live. You can even apply if you want to be part of the team that's going to be part of that. The World Economic Forum is also sponsoring this, a global coalition for digital safety. The Global Coalition for Digital Safety aims to accelerate public-private cooperation to tackle harmful content online and will serve to exchange best practices for new online safety regulation, take coordinated action to reduce the risk of online harms, and drive forward collaboration on programs to enhance digital media literacy. Now, the other thing you're going to see you need to be prepared for is being gaslighted. In other words, you believe something to be true, and then people will gaslight you. They will tell you that, no, that's not true. Why do you believe that? Or what are you going to believe, what I tell you or your lying eyes? So there is this concerted effort that things that you see happening, that you know are happening, there's a whole political party or parties that are out there to tell you that no, you're drawing the wrong conclusions from those facts. You need to be better educated. You need to listen to us. You need to undergo our training, and then you will be okay. How many of you believe that? Now I'm sounding like Tucker Carlson, who I think is doing a great job, by the way. That's one show I do watch. Although some nights it's like after 15 minutes I need to, go outside and chop down a tree or something to get rid of some rage that's built up. And so here's an example. We know there's this problem with transgender males competing in female sports. And so here's a front page article from USA Today on Thursday saying, efforts to ban trans athletes from girls sports cite untruths. In other words, all these people, all these lawyers at Alliance Defending Freedom and parents who are complaining about this and high school girls and college girls who say, I should have won that thing, but they put a male in there who they say is okay because he's going through hormone suppression, even though being born a male makes him more likely to have greater bone density and that sort of thing and stronger. All those people are they don't know what they're talking about. It's not a problem, USA Today says. And you could go to any of the other mainstream people, CNN, MSNBC, New York Times, Washington Post. They're all like, what are you people complaining about? It's not a problem. This stuff, what are you upset about? I mean, are you upset about things like this? Miss Nevada USA pageant is a transgender male, is a male. Miss. It's crazy. They had a thing, there's these clashes going on. There's a spa in Los Angeles, the We Spa, W-I. It's a female spa. Lady was in there with her underage daughters, under 18 daughters, and a transgender male, naked, walked through for everybody to see. Now, if he did that on the street, well, and he was transgender. He thought he was a female. And this lady, I won't play the video, she confronted this person at the front desk and said, there's a guy the medical term, I can see his junk, man. What's your problem? He's in front of little girls. And to which this person, who is because I don't say male or female, I'm not sure, to be honest with you, has undergone, the tech overlords have completely got this person bamboozled. And said, our policy of our spa is that we have to respect people's choices. Okay, well, how about my choice, the mother says, to have my daughters not see this guy's junk in a place they thought was safe. So what happened was, and I will give the UK, the British newspapers credit, some of them have a tabloid quality, but they cover stuff better, what goes on in the US better than the US media does. So here's the Daily Mail article this morning. Clashes break out in LA between rival protesters after viral video showed spa customer complaining about a transgender woman, i.e. a male, exposing herself, i.e. himself, to children while in a female-only steam room. And here's a video. Now, I think I've silenced the audio on this, but here, what happened was people showed up at the spa in downtown LA on Wilshire Boulevard to protest this thing. They're upset. They don't want their daughters and kids exposed to this stuff. And here's a photographer. Antifa shows up. And here's a photographer, but you see the Antifa, they don't want their pictures taken. They're so proud of their positions. They're attacking this photographer. See how they have the umbrellas? And they're yelling, get his boop, boop, boop camera. Hey, get the boop, boop, boop out of here. And they chase him down the street. And the cops are there. There's cops down there. How many arrests do you see taking place? 0? I mean, are the cops all transitioning too, to be honest with you? I mean, the cops used to do stuff. Now, here's a guy shows up, Trust Jesus, a street preacher, and look what they do to him and the people with him that are carrying a Trust Jesus, Jesus Saves signs. You're just here to intimidate us. You're just here to trigger us. So we're going to beat you up. How many arrests do you see taking place, my friends? You need to be ready for this stuff. Be courageous, as Paul says in 1 Corinthians 16. Act like men, real men, who stand on principle, stand firm in the faith. So I'll give these guys credit for being there to speak up against this stuff. They got beat up, sworn at, cursed, kicked, knocked down. Daniel Greenfield has a great article at Front Page Magazine. General Milley, he's the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I thought this was a great graphic picture. Leads the enemy within. As the Black Lives Matter riots, Greenfield writes, torched the country, General Mark Milley, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, insisted that the violent assaults, this is last year when President Trump was still in office, insisted that the violent assaults threatening the nation's capital were merely protests and berated Trump's advisor, Stephen Miller, who had warned the cities are burning. After the White House came under attack and a BLM mob set fire to the Gatehouse, Trump aides, at the request of the president, drafted a document invoking the Insurrection Act that would have ended the nationwide reign of Democratic terror by putting troops on the street. Milley, courageous whatever he is, vocally rejected the idea, claiming that the violent riots were just a protest and it wasn't appropriate for the military to be involved in political issues. Ignoring history. Good day to remember, July 4th. Eisenhower sent troops down to Little Rock. Kennedy sent troops to Mississippi to help integrate the schools. George H.W. Bush sent troops into Los Angeles to put down the riots after the Rodney King incident, or the not guilty verdicts in the Rodney King case. After accompanying President Trump to Lafayette Square, where Black Lives Matter rioters had tried to set the Church of the Presidents on fire, Milley quickly withered under media pressure. I should not have been there, Milley recited in an apology video, and defended the Black Lives Matter Antifa insurrections as responses to the centuries of injustice towards African Americans. Sidebar fact, General Milley. More Africans have immigrated voluntarily, black Africans have immigrated voluntarily in the last 20, 30 years to the United States than ever came here in forced slavery, by many times. General Milley, you are an ignoramus about American history. American POWs in Vietnam had held out under torture rather than record Marxist confession videos like the one that Milley made for the media to protect his career. But Milley just didn't stand down in the face of the BLM riots. He joined the move to divide and weaken the military by bringing BLM curriculum of anti-white and anti-American hate into the ranks of the military. Dividing American soldiers by race has a crippling effect on unit cohesion and general morale. It weakens our national security in the face of the threats from communist China and our other aggressive enemies, Russia and Iran. As the summer riots engulfed over 200 American cities, Milley joined the push for diversity and inclusion. He demanded that Fort Bragg and Fort Hood, named after Confederate generals, have their names changed. Milley had never brought up, but when he was the commander of the Army Forces Command at Fort Bragg, and later a commanding general at Fort Hood, it wasn't politically expedient then. He's just a political hack is all that he is. And then, it was either last week or just a week ago, there was a House Armed Services Committee. Representative Houlihan, a Democrat from Pennsylvania, called on Milley to defend the imposition of critical race theory on the military. First, you're going to hear from Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, then from this General Milley chap. Both of them should be fired. They are a disgrace to America. Now listen, we can argue about the founding of America and who was involved and whether it was right, whether all this other, listen. They're tearing it all down. These are the top 2 military people in the United States of America. Here is what they said, and they were questioned. What do you think about critical race theory? Questioned by Republicans. So this is a few minutes long. Endure to the end.
In my previous discussions with service members and particularly officers, I would hear about complaints over parts not arriving on time, long deployments, and in my more recent discussions with those officers, the number one issue that they raised to me with concern, often unable to speak publicly for fear of the type of retribution that Lieutenant Colonel Lohmeyer faced, they say that your stand down regarding extremism did not help our military, it hurt the military. And I want to share with you that perspective, that it caused service members to otherize one another, it impaired group cohesion. And interesting to me is that I've heard those sentiments most frequently from units that are majority minority, that this was not particularly helpful. So I wanted to give you the opportunity to maybe share with us more specificity regarding the definitions that seem to be a challenge when Ms. Hartzler was asking questions. How should the Department of Defense think about critical race theory?
Could I make a comment, Secretary? I'm sorry.
Well, I'm very limited on my time, General Milley.
Well, I just want to make a comment that the feedback
I know, but
I've gotten.
I've asked the question to Secretary Austin.
I don't know what the issue of critical race theory is and what the relevance here with the department. We do not teach critical race theory.
Liar.
We don't embrace
Liar.
critical race theory, and I think that's a spurious conversation. And so
Gaslighting.
we are
This is called
focused on
gaslighting.
extremist behaviors and not ideology, not people's thoughts, not people's political orientation. Behaviors is what we're focused on.
I would like to yield some of my time to General Milley because I know that he had some comments that he wanted to make when Representative Gates was talking, as well as Mr. Waltz, about a similar subject of the stand down and race theory. Would you like a minute or so to comment on that? Do you remember what we were?
No, so what they did is they issued stand down orders. Stand down everything you're doing and undergo this training. Implementation of things. And here's General Milley's response.
Your line of questioning or thought was there?
Sure. First of all, On the issue of critical race theory, et cetera, I'll obviously have to get much smarter on whatever the theory is. But I do think it's important, actually, for those of us in uniform to be open-minded and be widely read. And the United States Military Academy is a university. And it is important that we train and we understand. And I want to understand white rage, and I'm white. And I want to
Who said anything about white rage?
understand it.
And this is not white rage. This is righteous indignation.
So what is it that caused thousands of people to assault this building and try to overturn the Constitution of the United States of America? What caused that? I want to find that out. I want to maintain.
Did he give a rip when they were trying to get into the White House? Did he do anything? What a liar. Oh, good grief. Now, hang on. You got to hear this.
In my
But I do think it's important, actually, for those, and we understand, and I want to understand white rage, and I'm white, and I want to understand it. So what is it that caused thousands of people to assault this building and try to overturn the Constitution of the United States of America? What caused that? I want to find that out. I want to maintain an open mind here, and I do want to analyze it. It's important that we understand that because our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians, they come from the American people. So it is important that the leaders, now and in the future, do understand it. I've read Mao Zedong. I've read Karl Marx. I've read Lenin. That doesn't make me a communist. So what is wrong with understanding, having some situational understanding about the country for which we are here to defend? And I personally find it offensive that we are accusing the United States military, our general officers, our commissioned, non-commissioned officers, of being, quote, woke or something else because we're studying some theories that are out there. That was started at Harvard Law School years ago, and it proposed that there were laws in the United States, antebellum laws prior to the Civil War, that led to a power differential with African Americans that were 3/4 of a human being when this country was formed.
Okay, I have to stop this. He is a total ignoramus on the Constitution and the 3/5 clause. It's not even 75, whatever he said, 75%. He doesn't even know what the Constitution says. That was enacted, that was a compromise to reduce the power of southern states because they wanted to count all the slaves. That was an anti-slavery move, not an anti-black move. It took time for people to undo all of these institutions that have been set up. And we fought a war where 300-some thousand men died to get rid of that horrible institution. And yeah, it was wrong. And I don't mind studying critical race theory. That's not the point, General Milley. But if you had half a clue, you would know that it's not studying critical race theory. And by the way, it didn't just emanate from Harvard Law School and Derek Bell back in the 70s. In the 70s, I was studying in graduate school critical theory by a guy named Robert Quinney, Critique of Legal Order, which was a complete Marxist takedown of the entire United States system. So somebody needs to go test those metals for lead paint, because I think he's getting some off-gassing. How long did this take? TikTok, it's over. This is the top military person in the United States. There are a bunch of flag officers that have stood up against this. Here's a couple other examples, and I'll talk about something else related to this. In connection with Pride Week. In Canada, you know they're not having Pride Month. They've now said that they're going to have Pride Season. I hear people out here saying things every now and then like, what? Are you kidding me? Yeah. No, I'm not kidding you. Canada is over. And you can go look at editorials in the Toronto Sun and everything that's saying this critical race theory, this stuff is insane. In Canada, by the way, here's a sign that appeared at the Toronto Zoo this week. I will let you look at it without comment. Folks, do you understand? I hope you understand the state of the world. So when Jude was writing to his audience, he said, I really wanted to talk about some great theological issues, but there's stuff going on that you need to know about and you need to understand and order your life accordingly based on the good doctrine that you have. Here's Matt Walsh, a blogger, who wrote, there was somebody who wrote to Matt Walsh, or wrote an article, in a gay pride parade, don't go to any. Do not people take their children to these things. And there are naked people, there are guys that are acting in dominant submissive roles, naked, being paddled and spanked in leather, and if you've seen pictures of it, you can't unsee it. That's the problem. Don't look at it. Just take my word for it. And a lady wrote an article that she takes her kids because kink should be part of gay pride, and the kids should be exposed to it. So Matt Walsh writes, the woman who wrote that article calling for kids to be exposed to kink has a husband who is now her wife. Their 8-year-old son dresses in drag. She identifies herself as gender vague, a tornado of dysfunction and confusion. This is what the left wants every family to become. Matt Walsh is 100% correct. This is Romans 1 stuff happening right in front of you. Somebody responded to this, somebody named Ibrahim. Your obsession with transgender people makes me wonder if you're just denying something in yourself and projecting your self-loathing onto the world. God knows you wouldn't be the first one that's done that. Get help. Live your truth. Here's another article from, I forget where this comes from, one of the major newspapers. From viral videos to Fox News, how right-wing media fueled the critical race theory panic. Listen, folks, what General Milley, you don't understand? There's no critical race theory being taught in our schools. All you parents are going to PTA meetings and school board meetings and complaining about this. You don't know what you're talking about. You're wasting your energy. It's not happening. It's not happening. There are school boards all over the country. You know what they've done? They've barred parents from seeing the curriculum that's being taught to their children. If there was no problem, why don't they let everybody look at it? They don't, because it is a problem, and they're lying to you. In Virginia, one school board was voted out, or the PTA association was changed. The parents took it over and voted in new people. Guess what happened? The National PTA Association has taken actions to have everything that the parents did undone, because they're not acting like we think they should act. They're fascist. They're little dictators. So I would encourage everybody, get involved. Go to the meetings, sign up, get your minute or 3 minutes, and tell them what you think. And get informed before you go. Because I've showed you the curricula details that are used in many places on math. A correct answer is racist. Demanding a correct answer is racist. Like, do you think, like, let's say somebody takes a math class and they don't have to give a right answer, and then they go to engineering school at a major engineering school like Cincinnati, and they don't have to give a right answer, and then someday somebody hires them to design the foundations of a condo in Miami Beach. Do you want an engineer that gets the right answer? I would think you would. I do. I like the engineers who figure out that, when I slam on my brakes, I'm going to stop in a certain length of distance. So Trump appointed a thing, and this came out, the 1776 Project, 1776 Unites. It has people in it like Larry Arnn, the president of Hillsdale, Shelby Steele, Mike Gonzalez, Michael Ferris, Carol Swain. Carol Swain's a black law school history and law professor. She just retired from Vanderbilt. And because she's conservative, they've been trying to fire her for a long time. And she made it to the end of her career. So here's a picture of the people involved in the 1776 Project. You know what that looks like to me? It looks like America. Some of those are not even white. In fact, I think in this picture, most of them are not. This was their launch. So here's a story. Somebody sent this to me, said I could share it, no names or identification, of military branch or base. Person has a child, serves in a top secret position in one of the military branches. This week, in response to the stand-down orders, they had in-service training. You can go, by the way, you can go and download the 1776 Project. It's very well done. It says, we had racial problems, Martin Luther King, civil rights, but we had this Constitution, we had a Declaration of Independence, and we worked through these problems. And then all of these black people there, this might be Woodson, and Carol Swain is in the red to the right. They said, you know, they've all been successful in America. Like the athlete, she's so oppressed, she's representing America in the Olympics. She's been brainwashed. So anyway, this top secret guy, person, has in-service training. They are told the 1776 Project, which, by the way, which was one of the first things that Biden did when the Biden administration came into power in January, was to nix this thing and try to suppress it. Because it told the truth. And it was going to be contrary to everything else that the third Obama administration wanted to accomplish. The military people in that seminar were told the 1776 Project report is the product of neo-Nazis and white supremacists. You cannot belong to that organization at the risk of your career. Today's July 4th. Now, whether you like America or not, that it's, you know, plenty of people listen to this around the world. And for all its flaws, America's been a little bit unique, I think. It's not anymore. On July 4th, 1986, they had just redone the Statue of Liberty in New York. Pam and I had been up in the torch or whatever a couple years before that, just before they shut it down to renovate it. July 4th, 1986, there in New York Harbor with the Statue of Liberty to his back, the then President Ronald Reagan gave about a 10-minute speech. I'm going to play a few minutes of it because he remembered what was going on, what had happened in America, and some of the people that were important to its founding, who were highly flawed individuals. Been around a number of decades now. Everybody I met is highly flawed, except my wife back there. And she's still working on me. Here's Ronald Reagan, July 4th, 1986.
But it's worth remembering that all the celebration of this day is rooted in history. It's recorded that shortly after the Declaration of Independence was signed in Philadelphia, celebrations took place throughout the land, and many of the former colonists, they were just starting to call themselves Americans, set off cannons and marched in fife and drum parades. What a contrast with the sober scene that has taken place a short time earlier in Independence Hall. 56 men came forward to sign the parchment. It was noted at the time that they pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honors. And that was more than rhetoric. Each of those men knew the penalty for high treason to the crown. We must all hang together, Benjamin Franklin said, or assuredly we will all hang separately. And John Hancock, it is said, wrote his signature in large script so King George could see it without his spectacles. They were brave. They stayed brave through all the bloodshed of the coming years. Their courage created a nation built on a universal claim to human dignity, on the proposition that every man, woman, and child had a right to a future of freedom. For just a moment, let us listen to the words again. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Last night, when we rededicated Miss Liberty and relit her torch, we reflected on all the millions who came here in search of the dream of freedom, inaugurated in Independence Hall. We reflected, too, on their courage in coming great distances and settling in a foreign land and then passing on to their children and their children's children. The hope symbolized in this statue here just behind us, the hope that is America. It is a hope that someday every people and every nation of the world will know the blessings of liberty. And it's the hope of millions all around the world. In the last few years, I've spoken at Westminster to the Mother of Parliaments, at Versailles, where French kings and world leaders have made war and peace. I've been to the Vatican in Rome, the Imperial Palace in Japan, and the ancient city of Beijing. I've seen the beaches of Normandy and stood again with those boys of Pointe du Hoc, who long ago scaled the heights, and with, at that time, Lisa Zanetta Hen, who was at Omaha Beach for the father she loved. The father who had once dreamed of seeing again the place where he and so many brave others had landed on D-Day. But he had died before he could make that trip. And she made it for him. And Dad, she'd said, I'll always be proud. And I've seen the successors to these brave men. The young Americans in uniform all over the world. Young Americans like you here tonight, who man the mighty USS Kennedy and the Iowa and the other ships of the line. I can assure you, you out there who are listening, that these young people are like their fathers and their grandfathers, just as willing, just as brave, and we can be just as proud. But our prayer tonight is that the call for their courage will never come, and that it's important for us too to be brave. Not so much the bravery of the battlefield, I mean the bravery of brotherhood. All through our history, our presidents and leaders have spoken of national unity and warned us that the real obstacle to moving forward the boundaries of freedom, the only permanent danger to the hope that is America, comes from within.
Well, 35 years ago today, times have changed. It's time to remember, he related a story, one of my favorite stories of American history there. There were two people in that room in Philadelphia that day, John Adams and Thomas Jefferson. Both flawed guys. I mean, Jefferson supported slavery. Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence, Adams gave probably the most important speech in American history on July 1st. Adams then spent 14 years away from his family, helping build America and serving as a diplomat overseas. He came back, he eventually in 1796, he was elected second president of the United States, and then in 1800, he got into, and this is what happened. Pretty good document, and then people got involved. Politics got involved, and Jefferson defeated Adams in 1800 for the presidency, and their relationship just went to pot. Adams went back to Quincy, Mass. Jefferson served, I think, 8 years as president, then retired to Monticello in Virginia. But they started writing letters and developed a very close friendship. I don't know that they ever saw each other, but they exchanged letters regularly. HBO did a thing called, I think it was the Adams Chronicles or something. It's a phenomenal miniseries. On July 4th, 1826, 50 years to the day after the signing of the Declaration of Independence, Jefferson was dying in Virginia. And his last words were, "At least Adams is alive." Not knowing that just hours before Adams died, it's just very interesting these times to remember that we have. And now we're faced with assaults on our freedom. The unity that Reagan said in America is gone in the church too. That's even more troubling. And America's not going to save anybody, I know that. Only the gospel of Jesus Christ saves. But people start getting things on Facebook this week. Some of you may, if you're on Facebook, you may have seen these little pop-ups. And what Facebook is doing, I didn't get any, but others of my friends did and sent me these. You're getting alerts for, here's the alert, one of them. Are you concerned that someone you know is becoming an extremist? We care about preventing extremism on Facebook. Others in your situation have received confidential support. If you want to get support, just click below. Get re-educated. Do you understand how far we've gone in this country? We don't remember. Since it's July 4th, I thought I would do one other thing. I have oodles of stuff on the Middle East. I will do a midweek thing this week once the YouTube restriction is lifted. And we can upload a regular update. If you see this posted, would you just please share it today? I appreciate that. Not that, if you think it's worth sharing, of course, listen to it and decide first. But on June 30th, 1976, Palestinian Arab terrorists hijacked a plane. It eventually ended up in Uganda. The hostages were separated between other people and Jews. The other people were let go, the Jews were kept hostage. The Israeli government had to make a decision. What are we going to do about this? So they launched a rescue operation that took place on July 4th, 1976, the 200th anniversary of the United States founding. Kind of interesting timing. I'm going to play a little clip from a video called Follow Me. It's the story of Yoni Netanyahu. And so you'll see a little bit about this. He was the head of the ground forces going into Uganda to rescue the hostages and bring them home.
the Ugandan guards as we're driving towards the terminal building. I see the guard on the right side. He was aiming to shoot at us. Yoni and the officer who's sitting behind him pulled out the handguns that we had with silencers on him and was shooting at the guards. And right after that, we hear a machine gun going off from the Jeep behind us. And all of a sudden, from quiet, we go into full combat mode. Surprise is over.
So you don't think about your life anymore. You don't think about cover anymore. You just run like crazy. And you shoot the terrorists before they shoot the hostages.
And then all of a sudden, the guy who led the assault team pulled to the left and stopped near the corner of the terminal.
And Yoni, he shouts, "Move, move, move, move. Don't stop."
He couldn't, like us, kneel against the wall and crawl and walk slowly. He was moving ahead, making all of us follow him.
Yoni was running with us. And I saw Yoni stumble. And that was the last that I saw of Yoni.
This is Israel broadcasting from Jerusalem. All the hostages in Uganda have been rescued by Israeli forces.
It seems to me the government of Israel invoked one of the most remarkable rescue missions in history, a combination of guts and brains that has seldom, if ever, been surpassed.
Israel has carried out a daring raid for freedom. Crack troops were flown 2,300 miles to Uganda for a lightning strike at Entebbe Airport to rescue hostages held for a week by the hijackers of that Air France jetliner.
It was during the week of the bicentennial. We were a group of Israeli students at MIT. We heard in the news that there was an Israeli rescue mission and that the hostages had been freed and that one Israeli officer had been killed. I said, what? Why did they say one officer?
I was sharing with Bibi my concerns, that as I had called him to Boston, I woke him up and told him that I think something might have happened to Yoni.
I had a feeling that something's happening. I had this restlessness that there's something I must do urgently and I don't know what it is. It was very strange.
I called the unit and I asked what's going on. And I don't know who talked with me. I don't know the name of the girl who talked with me. But she said there was something, and I said, and I asked her about casualties, and she said, I don't know. I think she knew, because I felt something on the telephone.
I went back, I called my wife, waked her up, and told her the operation succeeded. Yoni is dead. Please go down to Bruria, wake her up, and stay with her because someone will come to inform her, and it's inconceivable to me that she will hear the knock on the door, tell her what happened, and sit with her until someone comes there.
But I said, how am I going to tell her? I can't look at her, I can't say it, she said. And he says, Nava, you need to do it. And then we hung up, and I stayed there for about 2 hours. I didn't know what to do. I think it was 6 o'clock when I went down, and I knocked on the door.
I didn't think she came to tell me that Johnny died. It was a shock. She didn't say it right away. She said something like it was wounded. I don't remember exactly the words. And I remember that the word that was in my head was why. I couldn't. I said why. I felt why. Why should it? Why it's like this? That was the. That's it.
It was as though somebody amputated my arms and my legs and tore a piece of my heart. Yeah. It was just torture, driving this at night. We came to the place where my parents had lived, and there was a big window in this cottage that they lived in. And my father was walking sort of back and forth with his hands in a typical stance that he has, behind his back. He's walking back and forth, ruminating about something. And all of a sudden his face turned and he saw me. And I think he said, "Bibi, what are you doing here?" And then his expression changed and he understood immediately. And my mother let out a terrible scream, and I'll never forget that. It was actually worse than hearing about Yoni's death. Because in a way it was their death too.
הוא היה כרוך בקורבן מכאיב מאין כמוהו, הראשון בין המסתערים, הראשון בנופלים. בזכות מעטים נושעו הרבים, ובזכות הנופל קמה מחדש קומה עמוסה לעייפה. ועליו ועליהם אפשר לומר בלשון דוד, מנשרים כלו, מאריות גברו, יהונתן על במותיך חלל, צר לי עליך, אחי יונתן. נעמת לי מאוד, נפלאתה אהבתך.
We are all human. Some happy with our lot, some searching and searching. I don't regret the crossroads I've passed. And if there is more beauty, more flowers along the road I didn't take, I still don't regret it, because it wasn't my road.
יקדש מירבה, בעלמא דברך יראותי וימליך מלכותי, ויצמח פורקני ויקרב משיחי.
On me, on us, rests the duty of keeping our country safe. We are united by something that is above and beyond political outlook. What unites us produces a feeling of brotherhood, of mutual responsibility, a recognition of the value of man and his life, a strong and sincere desire for peace, readiness to stand in the breach, and much more. This is a special people, and it's good to belong to it.
עושה שלום במרומיו, ויעשה שלום עלינו, ועל כל ישראל וידעו אמן.
Well, that's a very moving story that you can follow me on the internet, and you can find these videos of the funeral of Yoni Netanyahu. Look, we're I don't want to miss the theological issue that I see here. We're living at a very unique time where we may be called upon for acts of courage and standing firm in the faith. So we should draw lessons from the things we remember. In 1989, this is an uncropped picture of Tiananmen Square in Beijing, then known as Peking, China. And if you look down there in the crosswalk at the bottom of the picture, you see a man standing there, and if you look up towards the buildings in the square there, you see a line of tanks as protests were taking place in Beijing. This week, the news reports were that China was celebrating, the Communist Party of China was celebrating its 100th anniversary. And China and others have wielded tremendous influence throughout I fear, our government and our institutions. And things like critical race theory and the effort to divide people. No true American does that. That's coming from evil people. You saw some of them testify in front of Congress earlier. President Xi in his discussion was quite direct about what China would do to its enemies, and it would reshape the world order. It seems to be the theme of a lot of people here in the end times. Actually, here's a video of the celebration that took place in Tiananmen Square. You can see the same building there in the background where the tanks were coming from down this street here. And that lone guy stood up to him. Look, I have a strange sense of peace, but I know that, I've thought about photoshopping Facebook and Twitter logos on the tanks. That's just a symptom of a very, very deep problem. that Christians in the church need to understand is coming. But listen, this is no different than the first century church faced. It's the same pattern repeating itself. But Xi and others have tried to erase Tank Man from the internet. They've tried to wipe out the memory of what happened that day in Tiananmen Square. We have these people, this is a good editorial cartoon. I believe you're really misinformed or not really educated on this situation. So we need to educate ourselves. God has given us a lot of instructions about things that we should expect. I'm going to forego the rest of my update on the Middle East. As I said, I'll do a midweek thing once the YouTube restriction is lifted. So look for it around Wednesday. But steel your hearts, stand firm in the faith, and act like men. Father, thank you so much for your word. We pray that you'll help us to remember the examples that you've given us and examples from history, that how people of courage and faith have stood against sometimes improbable odds, knowing that all that we do is to be done for your glory. Help us to always keep that in mind. In Jesus' name, amen.